Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Louis B. Free Radio Show, Brain Food from the Heartland. And I am absolutely delighted to have returning to Louis Free Show, Gene Walters. Gene, I am delighted. This is wonderful. Wonderful being with you again.
I am so thrilled. Thank you so much, Louis, for inviting me. It's
You,
wonderful.
you are, thank you for agreeing to come on. I know I'm a bit wacky. Wackier, the older I get, the wackier I'm getting.
Say
Talk a
yay
little,
team on that, right?
yeah. Well, the team, it's odd because I've always talked to myself, and people would say, if it's as long as you don't answer, they used to say it's okay to talk. And to me, it was like, well, then who's listening if I'm not answering? And I've said this a lot of show. I do, and people that have seen me out, I do talk to myself, and I'll argue, I'll work
Yeah,
things out. But
yeah.
it's the weirdest is when I'm in the grocery store and I realize that someone is like behind me or close to me and they're kind of looking at me because I'm having a conversation. And then I know what I look like. And then I'll say, I'm sorry, I'm just talking to myself. And,
Just
and,
figuring
and then they
something
then they
out.
slowly move away. And sometimes not so slowly move away. But a little bit about you and your background, if you would.
Well, first of all, I want to tell you that the healthiest people are the ones that talk to themselves, and actually everyone talks to themselves all the time. You're just verbalizing it.
Yeah,
So there's
yeah, I
nothing
do.
wrong with that. Absolutely nothing.
Well,
And we all,
and I answer, Gene.
yes.
What do you,
Well,
you
what
know,
if
if I'm
you're
the, go ahead.
What if you're having a conversation with your deepest self? What if you're having a conversation with your spiritual self? I mean, the way I look at it, God talks to us all the time, and if we keep that channel open, then we're getting some pretty cool stuff. I mean, I expect it, to tell you the truth. I ask, tell me what I need to do about this, and then I just let it come to me. And I get the best stuff that way. So, it's part of my daily ritual. I mean, I want that. I want that. And most people just go to the world for their answers, and they only get a three-dimensional answer when they do that. And there's so much more and so much more that's deep that that can guide us. And so I think it's important that we talk to ourselves. So there
Well,
you go.
thank you. Thank you for that. So let's talk about you.
Okay. um let's see, lately I've got some workshops set up that I'll be doing some workshops on discovering your brilliance. And what I'm getting to with that is really helping people realize that no matter what goes on in their life, they're being guided. So even when we're in challenging situations, even when we're like, oh my gosh, this terrible thing's happening, I really want encourage people to look at what is the gift in that. How are they being guided to something greater, something better, something higher, when they embrace those moments. We don't come out the other end different. We come out the other end different. And if we embrace it, we come out better. So that could mean anything from looking at your fear and walking into your fear, and then realizing that that's what made me stronger, bolder, um, more communicative, or whatever. And then the same thing is true, like you get ill, you find out you're when you're finished, when you're complete with that, you end up being a different person. And that's the value of it. That's the goodness of it. That's how we're being led. I don't know that we have to struggle through all of this. I do think that we have to pay attention, and when we pay attention, we'll be guided, because we're not in this thing alone. There's a higher element to who we are, and we don't want to live at the three-dimensional stage forever. We want to really be able to deepen who we are so that we understand that there's things we're here to do. There's a certain DNA that you have within you. You're a communicator. And so your job is to communicate, and whatever it is, that communication might change from year to year. You might be communicating a different kind of a message this year than you did 10 years ago. And that's called progress. It's called, evolution. And so that's what I'm encouraging people to do, is look at their evolution. And then instead of fighting it, instead of resisting it, go for it and see where it takes them. So that's kind of some of the things that I'm working with right now.
Wonderful. When your path to where you are,
Mhm.
um, how do I want to say it? How were you enlightened personally? How did you get out? You say that your
Yeah.
job to do or your, how did
Well,
that happen for Gene Walters?
when I was about 9, I was playing in the yard and I just saw this beautiful light that was came through me from the top of my head all the way down to my toes. And it was a beautiful, beautiful golden light. And it was like if you could take a fluorescent bulb and then increase the glow of that like 100 times. Um, and it was so joyful, and I really was fascinated with it. I didn't tell anyone about it because I knew no one would understand, but it was a beautiful light, and I realized that it was there all the time. And whenever I would sort of like get myself in trouble, like maybe I skinned my knee or something and I'm crying, I would go to the light and say to see if it was upset also, but it never was. So I thought, well, what if I could live in that light all the time? What if I could always be that light and not really be this other person that struggles, with, oh, am I going to pass the spelling bee today or whatever it is. And so I sort of made that my quest. But the other thing is, I've always been interested in spirituality, and just I want to say my
Always,
years.
always. Go ahead. I'm
Always,
sorry.
always. And so that led me to meditation. It led me to studying metaphysics. And, I found my groove. I found my groove in that because when I discovered I could actually answer some of the questions that I had in my mind, like, what's this really all about? And why am I here? And when I could answer that, when I could find those answers, I was so thrilled, thrilled, because I've never been able to operate from just a very shallow level. It's never been who I am. It's never made any sense to me. Making a living doesn't make any sense to me. Um, so it's always been there, Louis. I mean, I've never done anything that wasn't a part of. And that's what I'm trying to share with other people too, is that we're multidimensional, and there's so much more to us than just what lies on the surface. And sometimes it's shocking for people, and sometimes it's like glorious, like, yay, you're giving me answers that I've always wanted. So that's kind of what I write that in my books too. I
A
mean,
lot
that's,
of books. You've got a lot of
yeah,
books.
yeah. And I share that because I feel like that's what my purpose is to help people walk that walk. And to whatever degree they're able, to whatever degree they're willing to do that, because it's a different kind of life than the one we've been taught. I call it the little yellow picket fence or the yellow brick road
Yeah.
life, where you go to school, you get married, you have 3 kids, you get a nice job, you have a retirement plan. Are you amazed at how many people are constantly talking about retirement? They're 60 years old and they're talking about retirement. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing something that has more meaning for you? you know?
I agree. I agree. Yeah, a lot of people, and because they're in a position that they're not happy with, and they can't wait to get
Yeah,
out.
they're not expressing there's something inside that needs expression, and they're not expressing it. Like, one of the books I wrote is Be Outrageous, Do the Impossible.
Yeah.
Others have it, you can too. And that one is all about finding your passion, because I feel like from the time you were a little kid, you knew what your passion was. Here lately, I've been reading the book Opie, Ron Howard,
Oh yeah.
and from the time he was a little kid, he was carrying a camera around with him and taking pictures and doing film work when he was a little kid. Well, if you don't realize that that's really setting a tone, that's something that resonates for him. I mean, goodness gracious, that's his gift. And so oftentimes we do that when we're really young. We're doing things that tell us that this is a path for us. I have a grandson that he used to always wear Superman capes,
Oh,
and he was always being, I'd say, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm protecting my mom," And
that-
so he has within himself this protector archetype, And so whatever work he does, he's taking care of people. He's the protector. So he's in his right place when he's doing something on that order. And so it's not that hard to figure out, but I think culturally we've been taught like, well, where are you going to make the most money?
yeah.
And then so people go off track, and then they're all about making the most money or something, and then they're miserable. And I think they end up shortening their life for one thing, but they're not living the life they were destined to live. And so I've always been true to myself in that regard.
Uh, Interesting. And again, I want to let people know that your website, spiritualtransformation.com, spiritualtransformation.com. And of course, we've got the links on. I made me think of a song when you said that about when he was wearing a cape, a Superman
Yes.
cape. It's
Yeah.
called The Cape. The song is called The Cape. And
Oh, God.
you'll like, it's not, yeah,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
you will like it in regards to what we just talked about.
Yeah.
You and I
Beautiful.
spoke before about anxiety. We've talked a lot about
Yes.
anxiety,
Yes.
and I love your book, Anxiety to Peace. And one of
Thank
the
you.
reasons I like it so much is it's so direct.
Yes.
I think sometimes, and sometimes you need that directness.
Mhm.
Now, is it great to read a massive book on anxiety and the history of when diagnose, if
Uh,
you're really interested in it. But if
yeah.
you're dealing with anxiety personally, or
Yeah.
someone is, you really want to get to it. And
Yes.
that's what I love about that book.
Well, and then I'm very straightforward, as you may have figured out by now.
Yes.
I don't like it. It makes me crazy if people go on and on and on without getting to the point, like, what's the point? What's the point? But when in my books, what I try to do is always make it practical. Like, what are the practical things you can do to deal with anxiety? How can you begin to calm yourself down? How can you get to the truth so that you don't have to be anxious in the first place? Because I think culturally, again, we've been taught to worry and fret, worry and fret, worry and fret. And worry and fret does not help you one bit. It doesn't make the outcome better. It doesn't improve your health. And so there's a lot to do with just disciplining your mind. And that means like, where do you want to be? What do you want to think about? Then think about that. But it's also a discipline to where you have to do it again and again and again and again and again, because it's like training. You're training, we train our muscles and we get big muscles, but we don't have that in our culture to train our mind. And we have to train our mind in order to get where we want to go in life. If you want to have a peaceful life, you have to train your mind for that. And one of the things I do is meditate every day. Again, because I don't really want to just hang out in the third dimensional world. I want to go deeper and receive the wisdom and the guidance from that deeper mind. And we all have that. So if we train ourselves to do that, we can actually see this physical world from another point of view. We can see, we can see blessings, we can see goodness, and we're not always in that state of frenzy.
It's interesting when you say that about meditation, Gene Walters, because over the years, when
Mhm.
people would, I don't want to say make fun or ridicule flower children or whatever for
Yeah.
meditate, getting into some of those, and others getting into some of those things. And now there's article after article. My favorite publication is The New Scientist out of the UK. They've had articles in about meditation. I mean, everywhere, not
Yes.
just everywhere, about the value
Yes,
of
those
meditation.
flower children they were a symbol though of the transformation that we were making as a world.
That's
Yeah,
me,
and of course we
our
laugh
children.
We laugh at that. We laugh at any trend. Oh, you're going to change the traditions. Oh, you're going to be talking about meditation and love. I mean, what is that? And yet at the same time, if we look back, that was a huge turning point in our culture when we opened that door and admitted something deeper into our life. The whole idea of unconditional love. I mean, that's what Jesus taught 2,000 years ago. And people will say, well, I'm a Christian. And then I always say, well, do you forgive? Well, do you love unconditionally? Are you a Christian because you go to church? Or are you a Christian because you live it? So those flower children were the ones that introduced those spiritual ways. They were really spiritual ways. We don't have to talk. We don't have to call it that, because now we have people like Joe Dispenza, and he's just talking about the quantum field, but it's the same thing. So yeah, I say yay to the flower children. Yeah.
Yay.
Yay.
It's me. I'm one of them. I'm still
Be proud.
aging.
Be proud.
Well, there was an article, and this is a number of years ago. Cleveland Plain Dealer did an article and referred to me as an aging flower child. And now, and again, that was so many years ago. Now I'm an aged flower child, and I'm proud of it, I guess.
Wear a badge.
Not, I guess I am. When you again,
you should wear a badge.
You should
put a little trophy on your shelf or something.
Yeah, something, right? Something. Again, when we're talking about anxiety, again, the journey from anxiety to peace, practical steps to handle fear, embrace struggle, and eliminate worry to become happy and free.
Yes.
And I gotta say again, I truly recommend that for folks because of how
good,
direct.
Yes,
I agree. Direct. This is it. This is how you do it. Again, in a way that people can understand. That's the other part of it.
Yes. And I gave this to a fellow before it was even published. I sent him the raw version of it. And I said, he was struggling so much. And I said, please read this book and then tell me what you think. And it was like day and night. He flipped because it was affecting his health. It was affecting his marriage. It was affecting his parenthood. And it changed him overnight. It changed him because he realized there were things he could do. He didn't have to live with this anxiety all the time. I was raised by a very anxious mother. and I think that was one of the reasons why I was always gung-ho about finding other methods, because even as a little kid, I thought there's got to be a better way. This does not make sense to me at all, that she was fretting all the time. So anyway, that was a great motivator for me, because I know we don't have to live that way. We just don't. And even with this pandemic and everything, we were so programmed by the media to be upset and afraid. And I just think I wonder how many people just destroyed their health by just worrying all the time. Like nowadays we have a cold and they're calling it COVID. Everything is COVID now. Everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's so ludicrous and so out of control but we have to be very careful about what we allow into our mind. If we're letting people tell us to be afraid all the time, we need to turn the TV off, walk away. We do, because that is intruding. It's intruding on our natural state of joy and health.
Interesting.
We were built to be joyful,
Interesting when you say that, because someone turned me onto a song a number of years ago by Morrissey. I always loved the Smiths. Prior to that, he was the leader of, but it's a couple of lines are, stop watching the news. The news contrives to frighten you, makes you feel small and afraid. And I love that, because there's so much out there, and I understand how it can make people depressed.
Yes.
Look at the state of the world and some of the programming it's on now. And again, I've watched some of the, I hate to say true crime, the 48 hours where they show how they try to solve a murder. But I believe if you watch too many of those, that becomes your view. They're real. They're real. It's not, it's not a movie, and that is out there. But if you over focus on it or watch too much of it, you perceive everything like that, correct?
Yeah, we do. We see through those eyes, and then we forget that there are other people that are bringing hope to the world. There are Doctors Without Borders who are trying to help people in different countries. We forget all these different people that are there supporting life and bringing health and joy to people. We forget all that because now we're so focused on all the things that are awful, and of course we're going into anxiety with that, but that's a choice. It's a choice. You have to make better choices, and that's really what it comes down to. And the way you'll know is, what are your dreams like? If your dreams are frantic and chaotic and fear-based, then you've been dipping too much into that pool.
Because you do a lot with dreams, and you write about dreams and talk about
Yes.
dreams. And it's interesting when you say that, because you and I were talking off air, and we were talking a little bit about dreams, and my sleep is very erratic, but lately I've been dreaming very deeply. And I've got to say that there are times that I don't want to say I'm sorry I woke up, but I would have liked to have stayed in that state
Okay.
for a while. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Then I would say meditate. Again, go back to meditation, because if you look at a baby when they're happy, they grin, you can make silly noises or faces at them and they'll just laugh and be silly. And they're in joy. They live in joy. And that's what I was discovering when I was a kid. My natural state is joy. Your natural state is joy. And so how do we maintain that? We can't maintain it by going, if you don't pass your spelling test, you're just a big failure. I mean, that's erroneous. So we have to look at life with a different focus, and start enjoying the fact that each thing that is presented is a learning opportunity, and we can learn and have a good time with it. And if we have to do it 2 or 3 times before we get it, that's okay too. So, we're made to be joyful. And that by just looking at a baby, because they start out joyful. And I always think, what happened in between that brought that joy, that eliminated that joy and brought them to a different place? And I don't know that people are thinking in terms of, what is it that brings me joy right now? And do more of that. Whether it be playing music, or, getting into a sport, or just laughing more. There's one thing I notice is there's a lot of comedies on television too.
Sure.
And we can laugh. We can laugh more, and that will be really helpful.
I agree, Gene Walters. I agree. We need to laugh more. And you're right. There's also a lot of comedies on TV.
Mhm.
I mean, these days with TV, you can find pretty much whatever you're looking for, what you choose to focus on.
Yeah.
Again, I like to get caught up on the news. I will watch the news, the cable stations in the States. I'll watch all of them for news once in a while, because there's I'm not going to get political, but there's such a bias out there.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And I like a pure news.
Mhm. Have you found that?
Have I?
Have you found
No,
pure?
no,
Okay.
I have not. I used to really love the BBC for pure
Okay.
news, and that's changed.
That's changed too. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
that's unfortunate.
It very, very, very. I still like the BBC. I still get a lot of news from there, but there's also I'd say a bias there also, and it's
But
just
be careful then. If you notice that you start getting clenched up, turn it off.
enough. Yeah,
Then you're on overload. And if anybody deals with anxiety, pay attention to your body. Your body will tell you when you're on overload, when it's too much, when you start getting nervous and you can't sit down. Okay, change it, move it. The news is not your friend.
yeah. Well, that's for sure. That's for sure. I'm talking with Gene Walters, spiritualtransformation.com, spiritualtransformation.com. Gene, if we can talk a little bit more about dreams.
Sure, absolutely. Your dreams are really important as far as I'm concerned. They are you talk about straightforward. They are straightforward. They give it to you straight out. They're really reflecting what's going on inside. So whatever is going on inside, it will show up in your dream. And people say, oh, this is very strange and crazy. But if we look at it as a symbol, instead of like in life, if we look at our life is pretty crazy, I think. But the dream is so straightforward. So it'll give you in a picture form, the whole thing, a picture is worth 1,000 words or something like that. And that's exactly what a dream is. It just lays it out as a picture. And then if we look at everything in the dream as a symbol, like your car, when you're driving your car in a dream, it's just you're driving your vehicle. And you are, if you're the driver, then you're in control of your vehicle. If somebody else is driving your vehicle, then whatever they represent is in control of your vehicle.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So then that's a simple, that's pretty simple, but we're on our path, we're on the highway and we're driving our vehicle. And so are we driving a vehicle that's falling apart? Are we driving a vehicle that's pretty smooth and sporty? Are we driving a vehicle that's got like 100 people in the back of it, like a bus or a train or something? And so all of that is very symbolic as to how we look at life and how we take on life. So if we feel like we're responsible for everybody, then we're driving, a vehicle full of people, and are they cooperating with us? Or are they making racket and fighting everything? So all of that is reflective of what we're carrying around inside. And it's that straightforward, really. And then when we see all that, we realize that's giving us a cue as to how we want to deal with our life. If our dreams are always chaotic, then our life is always chaotic. And sometimes we have these dreams where we're walking in the forest and the stream is flowing and the sun is shining. Well, that's symbolic too, because that's giving you a cue as to how you're looking at life. Right now you're in a very calm place. You're enjoying everything, you're experiencing it all, you're part of it. So again, not too many people have those dreams, by the way.
That I can understand that, because it's the I hate to say the challenges, interesting, because people will say people are so busy today. And my response sometimes, and again, I'm not talking about people that have like 3 kids and they're transporting all the different different things that the kids are involved in, etc. But I'm wondering, what is everybody so busy doing? Because they say today it's different, but back, well, yeah, you didn't have social media, you didn't have internet, you didn't have smartphones, and if you'd sit outside at night and listen to the crickets and talk or whatever.
Yes.
There was more of a connection. So I do get that it's more of a human connection. We connect with each other, where now, again, when I see people walking around staring down at their phones, it's especially if they're in a group. It's troubling to me. I saw a guy literally cross the street. It's a good thing that myself and another car saw this guy. He just stepped off the curb, right across the street, staring at his phone. And I've also talked about this, Gene Walters, and this was a few years back. I was coming down to do the gig, coming down to the studio, and I saw 4 guys at a red light, 4 guys in a car next to me at a red light that were all looking down at their phones. And I'm thinking, you almost want to go over. There's human beings, so talk to each other. Do that, unless you're looking
at a restaurant. I see that all the time. There's 4 people at the table. They're all looking at their phone.
I've maybe said this too often on the show. My regular audience knows where I'm going to go. I was picking up takeout. This was a few years back, and I saw a couple that were sitting across from each other, eating their food with their right hand. Left hand had their phone up. And, I wanted to go over and gently put their hands down, and say, look at each other. If you want to do that, why wouldn't you pick up takeout, and then you can be in your jammies and look at your phone or whatever? It just, and that concerns me, because although the claims are that we're more connected because of internet or phones. We're disconnected from each
Yes.
other.
We are, and you talked about, earlier in life where you sat outside and listened to the crickets, and
Yeah.
that's a soothing melody. That soothes your soul. That's something that your soul will cultivate and then live a joyful life. And I agree with you, is that we have to turn off all of that stuff and or decide how much time we're going to spend with it. Maybe we're coming back around. What do you think? Maybe we're coming back around to where people are beginning. I don't know. I mean, I see people. I live in a neighborhood where a lot of walking takes place, and the thing I notice is that you almost need a dog to walk these days.
No, I like to
Everyone
walk.
has a dog,
Yeah.
But anyway, getting outside is, to me, it's something I do every day. I get outside every single day because it's calming, it's peaceful, but
Yeah.
it'll also keep you healthy. We need it. We really, really need it. So I'm just for turning it all off. We got to.
We have to. Yeah. And again, people, with the people getting up in the middle of the night looking at their phones, talk about kids and young people, and that's, they're being raised on that. It's different. And again, I'm guilty of it also. I get on the phone. I'm on,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
not like the younger people. Gene Walter, let me ID real quick. You're listening to Louis B. Free Radio Show, Brain Food from the Heartland, copyright B. Free Radio Limited, 2022, produced by the lovely Miss Bunny Face in cooperation with White Rabbit Productions. We're going a little long today, folks. My very special guest is Gene Walters. Gene Walters at spiritualtransformation.com, spiritualtransformation.com. This was a while back also. I saw like 4 kids walking up my street.
Mhm.
And none of them had their cell phones out. And I didn't want anyone calling the police. But I wanted to go up to them and say, "Oh my God, it's wonderful that you kids are talking with." I
Yeah.
didn't. I
Yeah.
didn't, of course.
Yeah.
I didn't. But I was so excited to see
Yes.
that.
Yes. So
And
maybe
it's
something's happening. Yeah.
well, I don't know, but and then I thought, Gene Walters, that's odd that was such a big deal, which tells
Mhm.
me that's rare, the way, from my perspective, from what I see.
Yeah. But what I hear from you, though, is that you want connection, that you
I do.
revel in, that
Yeah.
it's important to you to connect, with people, and really connect, not just like send emails.
Yeah.
And so that's why it was exciting for you. And I would love that to be exciting for everybody, you know, to be able to actually connect. I know a little bit about you, you know a little bit about
Yeah.
me, and we actually, not just an email back and forth. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. I'm with you. But kids today, they, for some reason, which I don't understand, they're expected to do soccer and ballet and drama class and all these things, and I don't really get it. I don't get, what is it, that their parents are so busy that they keep these guys shuffled off to do all these things, or do they actually believe that that's going to help mold them into better people if they do 4 or 5 activities besides school? I mean, that seems like, again, you're treating them like they have to be busy every single second. And I used to love to read. I would go to the library in the summer and just get a whole pile of books and read all week. And I just thought that was wonderful. I reveled in that. And so thank goodness I was not raised in that time period where you had to do everything under the sun, and be good at all of it.
And I think it's great that parents expose kids to some things, but if you make it too much, they're going to get overwhelmed. And how are they going to do in school? I mean, I know there's some kids that handle it very well, and
Mhm.
others that, if the parents are pushing them into a sport or something like that, that's not good. When you mentioned the library, and my audience knows I love my library. I've always got a library shirt on, and interesting when you say that, because I've had folks on from the regional library, and they've got so many young people. When they tell, I'm thrilled that young people
Cool.
come to different programs at the library. They have different activities, or they're there. And when I go to the library to see young people,
Yes, it's
reading,
exciting.
whatever. I'm glad to see that.
Yes,
Glad to
yes, me
see that.
too. Yes. Well, and that's another kind of enrichment though. Because you're actually picking out the books that you're most interested in. And so you're allowing yourself to be enriched in the ways, that work for you. I loved biography. So I read I'm not kidding. I read every single biography and autobiography in the library for my age group
Wow.
because I always was looking at what made this person do that. What was it in them that that said, I want to be a president, or I want to be, some kind of a dynamic being of some sort. I want to deliver the messages across with riding my horse saying the British are coming. What made you do that? And I always found it such inspiration in that, to really, because it may help me really understand that we all have something inside of us that is guiding us, that it's not a mistake that Ben Franklin was all over the world and creating all these amazing things and being a printer and, a messenger and everything else, because he had it inside of him. And so I think that's what reading does. It helps you understand what you've got inside of you. And then you could live that more fully.
I'm with you, Gene Walters, 100% on that. When you talk about, you talk a lot about intuition, inner guidance, etc. And
Yeah.
some people feel that you either have intuition or you don't, or you think you do or you don't. You can develop that, correct?
Yes, yes. And everybody has it, by the way. It's just that a lot of people ignore it because we have this rational mind, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's very linear.
Yeah.
And then we have this intuitive mind. It's a subconscious based, but it's very important to us. And we might decide I'm going to take that class, and then everything inside goes, and then it's like, what do we take the class or do we listen to that? Because that could be, there's something there that's trying. And my thing was to go into that resistance and go, what's going on? What is it you're trying to tell me? The opposite actually happened to me about a month ago, where I was looking at a class and I thought, oh, that sounds really interesting, but I don't know if I want to sit that long, because it was like over several days. And then I had a dream that night, and I was at the class and I was having so much fun. And so the next day I signed up for the class. It involved traveling and everything, but I signed up for the class, and it was one of the high points of my life so far this year, because I really had so much fun, but I learned so many things, and it really kind of made a kind of turn in the road for me, just having that information. So that's the difference. Intuition, my rational mind was going, oh, you have to sit all that time. As it turned out, I didn't have to sit all that much at all. but my intuitive mind was so right on with just the whole sense of enjoyment and adventure and learning. These are all things that I love. So I listened. And so we have to pay attention to when your intuition is there, which is always there. What's the feeling? But if you start asking yourself, what do I feel about this? Not what do I think about it? What do I feel about it? And you start noticing there is a feeling that goes on with it. You could even go further and go, well, why am I having this feeling? What is this feeling really about? What is it trying to tell me? And if you do that, then you begin to develop that connection. Another way to develop the connection is to meditate. Get quiet time, go sit outside and listen to the crickets.
Yeah.
Those are ways that we begin to connect more deeply with that quiet mind. I call it the quiet mind that just says it very succinctly. Oh, take the class, or don't take the class. and then we can ask the questions, and then we have a really solid connection. So people will ask me something and I'll go, and they'll go, why? And I can tell them, and I go, why aren't you feeling that? Why aren't you feeling what I'm feeling? Because it's really loud to me. And it's because I've cultivated that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cultivate it again. Like you have to pay attention, and and
Mhm.
welcome it, correct?
Intention. Yep, yep. And spend time, I mean, really listening, like maybe journaling every day. Maybe when you get up in the morning and you journal and just journal, just dump everything out onto a journal. And then in time you begin to notice there's patterns in what you're putting in that journal. And then you begin to recognize also that there's a feeling that happens when you're doing that right off the bat in the morning, before you get into your rational mind. There's a feeling that happens there, and that's your intuition. You begin to connect more with your intuition. And then after a while, nobody can talk you out of it. They'll go, it doesn't feel right to me. I'm not going to do it. And they'll go, oh, well, no. These are all the reasons you should. Go,
Not
not going
doing
to happen.
like you said, you need that quiet time and you need to cultivate it
Yeah.
and welcome it.
Yes, indeed. And revel in it. I mean, really revel in it. Because a day without it would be a bad day for me, because I need it. It's like, it's like taking nectar from the gods.
That's a great way of putting it.
Yes, yes. It is a great way to put it, because that's really what it is. That's what you were onto when you were doing the flower child thing. That's what you were onto then. You knew that there was something much deeper that needed to happen than what was going on in the world. And you guys were like leaders. You brought it in. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And again, when you're talking about knowing more, that there's more, you have to acknowledge that.
Mhm.
As if we're
Yes.
too linear,
Yes. Well,
where's the joy?
yes.
The growth, right?
Exactly. And then with the other thing is, like then the culture reduces that to, oh, the flower children, they just smoke dope and they just do da
Well,
da da da
I
da.
did, I
And they
did plenty of
minimize.
that. I did plenty of that back then.
Well, and that's true, but the bottom line is it takes the message of that away.
Yeah.
Nobody's
Right. I get it.
looking,
That's, yeah.
why the flower children? Why is that? And that's what I always want to go, well, why? What's going on? What am I missing here? This is not an accident that this happened, there's something going on here. And so that's important to me, to look for something deeper and not just brush it off, because there was a reason why that shift was happening. It's so important. And there's a big shift happening now too, by the way. A
Talk
big
with
shift.
us. Can you,
Well, we've been living in a very patriarchal world for a very long time, and so in the last few years, I think this pandemic fed into I think that was just an outer, almost like an outer thing that happened to force us into a quieter state of mind. We spent 2 years being more quiet, and that to me was not an accident. So we were being taught to really spend more time with our family, be quiet, don't be running around like crazy people all the time. And so we were given that as a blessing, and then we made it into like, oh, it's a pandemic, we have to be afraid. But I think the real purpose of it was really to develop this quiet way to bring in a more feminine energy. We're made up of feminine and masculine energies. And so we've been moving away from the masculine, the go, 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 do, and we're moving into more the feminine, which is more of like listen, nurture, be kind. That's an energy of receiving. And so we're in that state of being right now. We're developing it. And some people are very good at it, and some people are fighting it, as normal. But nevertheless, there's a shift taking place in the world. We are so involved in the world like we've never been involved before. I mean, all the stuff that's going on, that like even in the Ukraine, where we're there. We're saying you can't be taking this from these people. We're involved all over the place, and there's a nurturing, kind of a kind energy that we're exhibiting. We're not that good at it yet, but we're going to get better, I believe. And I think that's the new age, as it were. That's the new age. And you were at the tip of the iceberg with the flower children thing, because that was the beginning of something new coming into the world. And that flower children thing, that, all of that was the beginning of love. The message was love. I
Yeah.
mean, no
Oh,
matter
yeah.
what you did, the message was love. Definitely.
I agree, but I never thought about it quite like that.
Yeah.
Never thought about it. Again, not it, yeah, to say, like Woodstock, where they had hundreds of thousands of people that got
Yeah.
along. And then they
Yeah.
tried to do it, in the late 90s or sometime in the 90s, and it was a disaster.
Yeah. So there was a wave that was, you were
Yeah.
riding a wave, don't you think? And that at that particular time, that was the perfect way to make a statement. And Jesus was the same thing. 2,000 years ago, I'm sure there were people laughing at him. I mean, they certainly were threatened by him because he was saying something that was very revolutionary. And so that we got to get rid of this guy because he's
Yeah.
mucking up our traditional system. And isn't that what happens all the time? We get into these traditions, and then we're like, "Oh, I'm going to hang on to this for dear life. I'm not going to let anybody muck it up for me." And then pretty soon people are being killed, and there's uprisings, there's revolutions, there's all sorts of things. But really, it just, we step back, we can see the change happening. We can see this shift happening. I call it a shift. So, and I'm excited about it, to tell you the truth. I really like it. I want it. I think it's good for everybody, but we'll see as we go along.
Yeah, we have to see. I agree. When you talked about the pandemic, and again, some people uh, grew from it
Yeah.
because it slowed people down, it
Yes.
kept people home, and um, I've talked to people that started reading that hadn't read
Yes.
in decades. They hadn't
Yes.
sat down to read a book, read
Mhm.
something, and or on their Kindle or whatever,
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
decades, and literally in decades, that started
Amazing.
reading again. And I love hearing that aspect. And
Yeah.
then there was other people that were just constantly in fear.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
again, I'd say I think especially in the early days
Mhm.
of COVID, I lost a friend in the very early days.
Mhm.
They, and so I understood some people being, I hate to say concerned. I know I hate to say fearful,
Mhm.
concerned about it. And then again, anxiety for people, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gene,
Yeah.
anxiety.
It promoted, I mean, the way it was presented,
Ah,
I really believe that it didn't have to be that dramatic, but maybe it did. Maybe
no,
that language that people have to have in order to make the changes. Because if we're a fear-based society and the only way we make change is through fear, then that's how it's going to be presented to us. But as I said, I don't think it has to be that way. I think when you're really into a growthful mode and you want to grow and you want to expand, then you don't have to, nobody has to urge you through fear to do it. You do it because you want to do it,
right. Yeah,
you
I
know.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I've had physicians on that have disputed a lot of the decisions, and even government is, I,
Mhm.
I don't want a second guess, because when we first learned about it, the line I would always say, the one thing I know for sure is no one really knows for sure,
Yeah.
because it was new,
Yeah.
novel coronavirus. Yet, and we realize now that they made mistakes. Again, some of the things
Mhm.
with school closings, again, I'm not getting
Oh, yeah.
political at
Yeah.
all. And the kids, and
Oh,
being away from, and depression and suicides with
uh,
kids that
terrible.
weren't
Yeah.
able to be or connect with their friends, and the loss of education,
Yes.
all
Yes.
through
Yeah,
that
it really
fear.
makes you, it really does make you wonder, you know, there's got to be a better way. But I think we have to say that a lot to ourselves. There has to be a better way. The thing is that when you, for instance, if you say to yourself, I'm a very clumsy person, you will find ways to fall over things and crash into things because you're programming your mind with I'm clumsy. But the same thing is true with illness. What if I'm going to be ill? What if I have an illness? What if the COVID attacks me? What if this? What if that? Pretty soon what you're doing is creating the perfect environment for that to happen. And that's the thing that I have against all that whole period of time, is that we were constantly being programmed with the idea of having COVID. And then the body
Good
will
point. Yeah.
accept whatever your idea is, it will accept it. And so I never did it, by the way, and I never did get COVID either, but I refuse to accept any of that because I chose health. And I would tell myself, and this sounds pretty radical because we live in a fear-based world, but I am always healthy. I am always healthy. I am always healthy. I'm always strong. I'm always healthy. And because I know health is our God-given thing, the body knows how to be healthy. So we do a lot of things to create unhealth or bad health,
Sure do.
But at the same time, if you program that idea in that I live in health is my natural state, then you're also guided to do things that are going to be healthy. So our mind is so important that we use it in a way that is always going to promote our own expansion and our own growth. And so we can't let somebody tell us, who we are or what we're going to experience. We just can't let that happen. And that a lot of that is what happened during that time. And I understand a lot of people died, but I wonder how many of them would have died anyway. And I'm wondering how many of them were so compromised to begin with.
Well, my friend
But
was compromised. I don't want to get into a lot of
absolutely.
how, but
Yeah. Yeah.
he took poor diet, just
Yeah.
lack of exercise, etc. And again, I'm not criticizing him. I miss him.
No.
Good guy.
It's just a fact. It's a fact.
It is. It
And
is.
so what if we were programmed more with the idea, like, every day you get out and walk, every day you do at least a half an hour of something or other, every day is just a joy to be able to do that. It's a freedom to do that. We can make good food choices, even if we're doing takeout, we can make good food choices, but I don't know that we're really guided in that way particularly. I mean, people who want that will seek it out, but on a general overall sense, it's almost like run, go, get some hamburgers.
Well, again,
Eat potato chips,
I think the way we're programmed, or the way we
Yes.
are, is certainly like, well, if I'll take this drug if this, and
Mhm.
then I can have high cholesterol because there's a drug. I don't have to
Yeah,
worry about, there's a drug for this. If I become diabetic, then I'll be on insulin. That's instead of programming the
right.
other. And I don't
Well,
want
and
to.
then the thing is then, of course, the drug for this is going to destroy the liver, and the drug
Sure.
for that
Yeah.
is
No.
going to.
The side effects, and they
Yeah,
all have them. Uh,
yeah.
but again, I think that's where we more. And again, TV advertising, the pharmaceutical industry, and again,
Yep.
the pharmaceutical industry does some wonderful things and creates some amazing
Mhm.
drugs that are very, very helpful for people.
Sure.
But back to when we're talking about anxiety, what happens if someone is really anxious and needs help for it? They're prescribed a drug, and if that
Mhm.
isn't working, they'll try a different one, and
Yeah.
then what I call them kicker drugs. And
Mhm.
the reason I know about them is I see the ads for them. Well,
Yeah.
if you're taking, God, I don't know, whatever,
Mhm.
antidepressant, and it just doesn't seem, then there's a new drug that can enhance that, and then
Yeah.
what are we
Yeah.
going to have in a few years? A third drug to
Yeah.
enhance the other. And I'm sure a lot of people benefit from the antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. Yet it's really not dealing with the core issues, correct?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's my point is that during all of that, when you're being prescribed this and that, are you being taught now how many minutes a day do you spend in quiet time? Or how are you doing with your journaling every morning?
Mm.
Or, what can we do here about stilling your mind? When do you go listen to the crickets? So all I'm saying is that maybe you need some of that, but also how about working with the mind? The mind is what creates anxiety, the mind.
Mhm.
And so how are we working with our mind so that we can be in a more peaceful state? That's the question I would ask.
Yeah, that's I like that, Gene Walters. That should be the question. I always love when I'm reading about it, one of the drugs, and they're not sure how it works, or they're not sure
Yeah.
why it worked, but it works. Okay, and
Yeah.
again, there's a lot of people that benefit from the pharmaceuticals. I understand that there are people whose blood pressure isn't, it could be hereditary, not related to diet or lack of exercise or whatever.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of life-saving drugs that they develop. It's just some of this is, and the advertising, I've said this a lot with the medication for diabetes. I know I'm not diabetic, and I don't know anyone close to me that's diabetic. And I know what an A1C is, how from the advertising. And
Okay.
it's just it keeps coming at people, and then people
Yeah.
don't. I don't want to say don't want to, but feel they don't need to take any personal responsibility. This is something that
Yes.
happened to
Yeah.
me, not something that I did to myself.
Yes. No, I'm with you completely. And that cancer happens to me, diabetes happens to me. No, these are a lot of these things can be averted if we just change the way we're living our life. We don't living in a state of anxiety is very destructive. And so yes, go ahead and take the drug, but at the same time, learn how to quiet your mind so that the need for the drug lessens over time. And I've had many clients who got off those drugs
It's
because
wonderful.
they learned to look at life from a different point of view. And they started seeing the benefits or the goodness or the blessings rather than, how everything is so terrible. So,
Gene Walters,
it's all a choice.
I got an email about if you would talk about and explain the Akashic Records,
Oh,
and
yes,
that's
yes,
something. Yeah, that's something we haven't
sure.
talked about today.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
the Akasha, the word Akasha is a Sanskrit word, which is the oldest language, Sanskrit, and it just describes a field of energy in which we live, breathe, and have our being. It's a field of energy that in as much everything is recorded there. So it might be that you had a run-in with your boss 10 years ago. That there's a record there of that. Now, what happens is in a reading is if I take your full name and birthday and so forth, I can connect with your energy. It's
wow.
all energy based, and then I could look at what's going on there. What is causing this anxiety? Okay, and then we can actually find some of these things and go, here's something that you would want to resolve because this is affecting you even today because it's an unresolved issue.
I see.
And so so the Akasha is just basically a record. So what sometimes in a dream you might see a library full of books and it's got your history in it in a
Yeah,
library. That's a symbolic version of the Akasha. So everybody, in our whole life, we've lived X number of years, but we've got all these experiences that we've had. And how did we deal with them? Did we work through them? Did we fight them? Did we get all worked up about them? And so all of those things are in like a record. And then as we go through and begin to bring that forward so that you can go, okay, now it's time to forgive that boss that was so
yeah,
mean. Or maybe it's time to work with this whole idea of anger and what is behind it and what can I do about it. So those are things that come through in a reading that can help people change their life. It's about, these are all your experiences. So what do you want to do about them? Do you want to be mad for the rest of your life, or do you want to look at what's going on and then decide how you want to be in charge of that, how you want to manage it? Because we can manage anything. That, you've been through everything. I've been through everything. We can manage it all. But we
Gene,
have to have the tools.
do you ever? Is it ever? I would say a downside for you or difficult for you having the insight and being able to um, connect on different levels. I thinking it
Sometimes
could be
it's
hard
confusing.
sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes
Confusing.
I love it. Honestly, I love it. It's like that gal on remember Start? track where they had the counselor Troy, and then she lost her intuition on some episode, and she said, "Oh, I think I'll have to kill myself now." And they said, "Oh, no, you're just going to be normal like us." And she said, "I know, I think I'm going to have to kill myself."
I love that. I love that.
And that's how I feel. Like, I'm so grateful. I'm so very, very grateful that I have the insight that I do and the wisdom that I do. I really am grateful. I don't think that it comes from me. I think it comes through me. But the other thing is, the only way it would be a problem is sometimes I go, "Well, how come you don't know that? Aren't you going to come along with me? Come on."
I love that.
That's the only way that sometimes it's a little bit annoying. Like, no, come on.
Yeah, come on. You should know this already, right? You should absolutely know this already. Your latest book, tell us a little bit about your latest book.
The latest book is The Deep Truth, and it's a lot about looking deeper inside. There's a lot of interesting articles in here about the fragility of the ego, living in the absolute. What is cause and effect actually? How do you express that? What are the masculine and female energies? Different things like that, how to live more simplified. So there's a lot, it's a deeper way of looking at life, is the way I would think of it as. So there's deep truth there, wisdom of the masters, reality and illusion. What is reality and what is illusion? What's the stories that we tell ourselves? How relevant are they? And what difference does it make what the stories are? So there's a lot of information in the book that hopefully jogs your thinking, but also helps you see from another reality, a deeper reality. And so I definitely want to get this to you.
And I definitely want to talk about it down the road, or as soon as you can, because you're so giving and so warm, and you've got so much insight and information about things that helps people. Again, I'm going to go back to your book about anxiety. Again, the directness of it just
beautiful,
blows me away. I love that, because it's like, thank you. You wrote it. It's a gift for people. And again, when we hear things about what the estimated percentage of people that are dealing with anxiety issues, say it like that, when they're thinking about rolling out some national testing for people, and my fear about, my concern is that that will make people anxious. The idea, if it comes up, and I hate, again, I get concerned with the pharmaceutical industry, the negative side of the pharmaceutical industry, because if you score that you've got anxiety to some degree, the suggestion or recommendation may be go on medication. So
well, and that's what I was kind of wondering, if the pharmaceutical business is behind all that.
That's what I'm saying. I wonder also when I hear something. Your website, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but my website is spiritualtransformation.com. I've got my sort of some of my philosophy on there. I've got some articles on there, and I also have some podcasts and my books. So I've got a lot of information on the. I keep putting it on there. I've got a lot of information on there. I hope to help be part of the change. I would like to be part of the change that's going on. I wasn't a flower child, no.
You're young,
but I am a flower child.
Now, good. Welcome. Again, it's spiritualtransformation.com, spiritualtransformation.com, and you're wonderful, Jean. I so appreciate you in our world. So we'll do the gig again soon, right?
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
I can talk with you for hours. Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Jean Walters, again, spiritualtransformation.com. I would urge you to get some of her books.